Today, in our series about the holy days, we're going through the Feast of Bikkurim, or First Fruits. Like all the feasts, we're going to go to Leviticus 23. This time, Leviticus 23, verse 9 through 14. And God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, and shall reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. And he shall wave the sheaf before God for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest waves it. And on that day, when you wave the sheaf, you shall prepare a male lamb, a year old, a perfect one, as an ascending offering to God. And its grain offering, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, an offering made by fire to God, a sweet fragrance, and its drink offering, 1/4 of a hin of wine. And you do not eat bread or roasted grain or fresh grain until the same day that you have brought an offering to your Elohim, a law forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings." Israel was finally about to enter the Promised Land. It had been a nearly 42-year journey from Egypt to Canaan. They're finally at the edge of the country that they had been promised, and they're about to go in. And this feast is a reminder that when they enter the land and they begin conquering cities, that they're to bring the first fruits of their spoils to God as a thanksgiving for the spoils of war, for getting farms that they didn't sow, for getting wine that they didn't brew, things like that. And not only were they to do this festival after they entered Canaan, or the Promised Land, but they were to do it every year. We are to do it every year. So let's look into a bit of the ins and outs of Bikkurim, or First Fruits. And a key component is what happens at the temple. So let's take a look at that. Let's go to Exodus 23, verses 14 through 19. "3 times in the year you are to celebrate a festival to me. Guard the festival of Matzah. 7 days you eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you at the appointed time in the new moon of Abib, for in it you came out of Egypt. And do not appear before me empty-handed. And the festival of the harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you have sown in the field, and the festival of ingathering, at the outgoing of the year, when you have gathered in the fruit of your labors from the field. 3 times in the year all your males are to appear before the Master God. Do not slaughter the blood of my slaughtering with leavened bread, and the fat of my festival shall not remain until the morning. Bring the first of the first fruits of your land into the house of God your Elohim." There's a few things we can glean from those verses. First, all men had to appear at the temple. It was a requirement during Bikkurim, or the First Fruits. Men were not to appear empty-handed. They were supposed to bring something to the temple. And it was a feast. It was a party. We're commanded to eat good food, and that food was not to be left over. The leftovers had to either be eaten or destroyed. Let's also read Deuteronomy 26, the whole chapter. "And it shall be, when you come into the land which God your Elohim is giving to you as an inheritance, and you possess it and dwell in it, that you shall take some of the first of all the fruits of the soil, which you bring from the land that God your Elohim is giving you, and shall put it in a basket, and go to the place where God your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell there. And you shall come to the one who is the priest in those days, and say to him, I shall declare today to God your Elohim that I have come to the land which God swore our fathers to give us. And the priest shall take the basket from your hand, and place it before the slaughter place of God your Elohim. And you shall answer and say before God your Elohim, my father was a perishing Aramean, and he went down to Egypt and sojourned there with a few men. And there he became a nation, great, mighty, and numerous. But the Egyptians did evil to us, and afflicted us, and imposed hard labor on us. Then we cried out to God Elohim of our fathers, and God heard our voice and saw our affliction, and our toil and our oppression. And God brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand, with an outstretched arm, with great fear and with great signs and wonders. And he brought us to this place, and has given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now, see, I have brought the firstfruits of the land, which you, O God, have given me. Then you shall place it before God your Elohim, and bow down before God your Elohim, and shall rejoice in all the good which God your Elohim has given to you and your house, you and the Levite and the stranger who is among you. When you have completed tithing, all the tithe of your increase in the 3rd year, which is the year of tithing, and have given it to the Levite, the stranger, to the fatherless, to the widow, and they have eaten within your gates and have been satisfied. Then you shall say before God your Elohim, I have put away the set-apart portion from my house, and also have given it to the Levite, and to the stranger, and to the fatherless, and to the widow, according to all your command which you have commanded me. I have not transgressed your commands, nor have I forgotten. I have not eaten any of it when in mourning, nor have I removed any of it for any unclean use, nor given any of it for the dead. I have obeyed the voice of God my Elohim. I have done according to all that you have commanded me. Look from your set-apart dwelling place, from the heavens, and bless your people Israel and the land which you have given us, as you swore to our fathers, a land flowing with milk and honey. Today, God your Elohim is commanding you to do these laws and right rulings, and you shall guard and do them with all your heart and with all your being. You have today caused God to proclaim to be your Elohim, and to walk in his ways, and guard his laws, and his commands, and his right rulings, and to obey his voice. And God has caused you to proclaim today to be his people, a treasured possession, as he has spoken to you, and to guard all his commands, so as to set you high above all nations which he has made, for a praise, and for a name, and for esteem, and for you to be a set-apart people to God your Elohim, as he has spoken. Again, as Israel is entering Canaan and getting the fruit of the land, they are to take a basket and bring it to the temple. But I think it's interesting that before they're to take it to the temple, they need to give it to those in need, widows, the fatherless, the strangers, and the Levites who don't have a portion of the land. And it's a reminder that everything that God has given the Israelites and this promised land that, they were slaves and they became a very powerful nation in almost overnight. I mean, it took longer than that, but it was very quickly. So yeah, definitely a reason to be thankful. Well, we don't have the temple today, and the events of Israel moving into Canaan are all well in the past. So how do we celebrate Bikkurim today? So let's start by looking at some oral Torah, some Jewish traditions, the Talmud, to see what they have to say. Let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 7 and 8. For God your Elohim is bringing you into a good land, a land of streams of water, of fountains and springs that flow out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey. The fruits and vegetables mentioned in this chapter are the specific fruits and vegetables that we're supposed to bring, at least according to Jewish oral Torah, Jewish tradition, things like that. Also, according to the Talmud, the festival was quite a sight to behold. I'll be reading from Mishnah Bikkurim, chapter 3, verse 3. Those who lived near Jerusalem would bring fresh figs and grapes, while those who lived far away would bring dry figs and raisins. An ox would go in front of them, his horns bedecked with gold and with an olive crown on its head. The flute would play before them until they would draw close to Jerusalem. When they drew close to Jerusalem, they would send messengers in advance, and they would go adorn their Bikkurim. The governors and chiefs and treasurers of the temple would go out to greet them, and according to the rank of the entrants, they would go forth. All the skilled artisans of Jerusalem would stand up before them and greet them, saying, "Our brothers, men of such and such a place, we welcome you in peace." So during first fruits or Bikkurim, farmers would they would attach their carts to their cows, and they would load them up with the fruits of their fields and their vineyards, and they would start driving the cows towards Jerusalem. And as people in the countryside and in the cities saw these caravans coming, they would run out, and it would be turned into sort of a parade or a party. People would put ribbons on the cows' horns and things like that. It must have been quite a sight to behold. And really, Bikkurim was a day to honor farmers. It was a harvest festival. It occurred mid to early spring. The crops had just started to come in, and people were celebrating. Those who were growing food for them, and I think that's a really neat thing, because a lot of times we take farmers for granted, and especially with today, all of our modern conveniences, we can take for granted the ability to go to the grocery store and get food. So I think taking some time to honor farmers is a pretty neat thing. Also, since we don't have the temple today, a lot of Jews will take their produce, their vegetables, their fruits, and they'll donate them to charity, since we don't have the temple to bring them to today. So how should we celebrate Bikkurim today? It's a bit more of a complex holy day than Yom Teruah. Well, some parts of it apply to the temple and the priests. Parts of it apply to the Israelites that were first going into Canaan. And parts of it apply to us today. And it's a little tricky to parse out which one is which. For example, should we... I've heard some people will go to the front of their churches or synagogues and they'll wave their produce of the year. Should we be doing that? I've heard some people will, Jews will give their produce to charity. Is that something we should be doing? Because since we don't have the temple today? Let's read a few more verses and maybe we'll get some insight. Let's read Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 through 10. Esteem God with your goods, and with the first fruits of all your increase. Then your storehouses shall be filled with plenty, and your vats overflow with new wine. How about Malachi 3, verse 6 through 12? For I am God, I shall not change, and you, O sons of Jacob, shall not come to an end. From the days of your fathers you have turned aside from my laws, and did not guard them. Turn back to me, and I shall turn back to you, said God of hosts. But you said, in what shall we turn back? Would a man rob Elohim? Yet you are robbing me. But you said, in what have we robbed you? In the tithe and the offering. You have cursed me with a curse, for you are robbing me, this nation, all of it. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, and let there be food in my house. And please prove me in this, said God of hosts, whether I do not open the windows of the heavens, and shall pour out for you boundless blessings. And I shall rebuke the devourer for you, so that it does not destroy the fruit of your ground, nor does the vine fail to bear fruit for you in the field, said God of hosts. And all nations shall call you blessed, for you shall be a land of delight, said God of hosts. Pretty powerful stuff. God will bless you if you are charitable. I think that's very clear. He says, it's almost a challenge. It says, see if you can outgive me, which I think is really amazing. So I think the Jewish tradition of giving first fruits to charities is a really good thing to be doing. Now, this next portion is purely my opinion. It's not backed by scripture. These are just my thoughts. So take them or leave them. First, what is a first fruit for us today? Back in ancient Israel, nearly everyone was a farmer in some way. So bringing your first fruits, a literal fruit or vegetable, to the temple made a lot of sense because that was your livelihood. But most of us aren't farmers, at least not farmers for a full-time job. So it's my belief that your first fruit has to do with what your profession is. It could just be money. If you want to donate your money to charity, I think that's certainly a good thing. It could also be your skill set. Maybe you could use that to sort of donate to charities or to friends and family. For example, I'm a computer programmer. So during Bikkurim, maybe I could help friends and family with repair computer problems. Or if you are a carpenter, maybe you could make wooden gifts or help people repair furniture or things like that. Your charity doesn't have to strictly be money. I believe it can be time or your talents as well. Again, just my opinions. I also think Bikkurim is a day to appreciate farmers. Maybe you write your farmers a letter just thanking them for growing your food and our food that we eat every day. Maybe if you know a farmer, do something nice for them. I think that would be a really good thing to add to this holy day. I also believe there's one more thing we need to do on this holy day, and we're going to transition to that now. Is the festival of first fruits connected to Jesus? Let's find out. Now remember, in Leviticus 23, verse 11, it says that first fruits occurs the first Sunday after Passover. That's important. So let's go through the timeline of Jesus' trial and crucifixion very quickly. After having dinner, Jesus goes to the garden, he's arrested, he's on trial, and he is executed on a Wednesday afternoon. And there's something strange that we'll read about. Let's go to Mark 15, verse 42 through 43. And when evening had come, because it was the preparation day, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent council member, who was himself waiting for the reign of Elohim, boldly went in to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. There was actually kind of a rush to get Jesus off the cross and buried. If you recall, the thieves on either side of Jesus had their legs broken. The reason for this was a Sabbath day was coming, and breaking the legs would speed up the death, and so they could get them off the cross and get them buried before sundown. So why would there be a Sabbath day starting Wednesday night? Remember, Jewish days started at sunset. Well, it was because it was Passover, which is a holy day. We haven't gotten to that one yet, but we will. So that was why there was this rush to get him off the cross and get him buried. So he was killed on Wednesday. Passover was on Thursday. And remember, how long was Jesus in the tomb? Wednesday to Thursday, Thursday to Friday, Friday to Saturday. And when was he discovered? Or when was the empty tomb discovered? Mark 16, verse 1. And when the Sabbath was past, Miriam from Magdala and Miriam the mother of Jacob and Salome brought spices to go and anoint him. The women came to the tomb on Sunday morning. They needed to wait till after Shabbat. So remember, in Leviticus, Sunday morning, the Sunday after Passover, is when first fruits falls. I think that's totally fascinating that Jesus was resurrected on first fruits. And I think Paul confirms it. Let's read 1 Corinthians 15, verse 12 through 34. And if Messiah is proclaimed that he has been raised from the dead, how do some among you say there is no resurrection of the dead? And if there is no resurrection of the dead, then Messiah has not been raised. And if Messiah had not been raised, then our proclaiming is empty, and your belief is also empty. And we are also found false witness of Elohim, because we have witnessed of Elohim that he raised up Messiah, whom he did not raise up, if then the dead are not raised. For if the dead are not raised, then neither Messiah had been raised. And if Messiah has not been raised, your belief is to no purpose. You are still in your sins. Then also those who have fallen asleep in Messiah have perished. If in this life only we have expectation in Messiah, we are of all men the most wretched. But now Messiah has been raised from the dead, and has become the first fruit of those having fallen asleep. For since death is through a man, resurrection of the dead is also through a man. For as all die in Adam, so also all shall be made alive in Messiah. And each in his own order, Messiah the firstfruits, then those who are of Messiah at his coming. Then the end, when he delivers up the reign to Elohim the Father, when he has brought to naught all rule and all authority and power. For he has to reign until he has put all enemies under his feet. The last enemy to be brought to naught is death, for he has put all under his feet. But when he says, all are put under him, it's clear that he who put all under him is accepted. And when all are made subject to him, then the Son himself shall also be subject to him, who put all under him, in order that Elohim be all in all. Otherwise, what shall they do who are immersed for the dead, if the dead are not raised at all? Why indeed are they immersed for the dead? And why do we stand in danger every hour? I affirm, by the boasting in you which I have in Messiah Jesus our Master, I die day by day. If, as men do, I have fought with beasts at Ephesus, of what good is it to me, if the dead are not raised? Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. Do not be led astray. Evil company corrupts good habits. Wake up to soberness, righteousness, and do not sin, for some do not have the knowledge of Elohim. I speak this to your shame. So I think Paul has connected the dots here. He sees that Jesus was the first fruits of the resurrection. And in fact, in the same way that there are multiple harvests throughout the year, there's a spring harvest, a summer harvest, and an autumn harvest. Jesus was the first harvest of the resurrection. He was the first one to be brought alive. And later on in the year, which is the length of the earth, the autumn harvest, that's when the saints will be resurrected in the last days. And I think it's beautiful that God tells us when we bring our first fruits, we need to bring the best, the greatest, without blemish, the prettiest looking fruits and vegetables that we have. But he wasn't a hypocrite. He gave us his first fruits, which was his son. He gave him to us, and with his resurrection, we have hope that one day we'll be resurrected too. So that's it for Bikkurim, or first fruits. I hope this was helpful to you. Just to recap, we're to bring our best, our first fruits, to what would be the temple, but we don't have the temple today. So it's up to you to decide where you want to bring your first fruits. It might be a charity, it could be your church or your synagogue, it could be your friends or your family, and it's up to you to decide what your first fruits are. It could be, the literal fruits and vegetables that we see in Deuteronomy 8:8, or it could be your money, it could be your talents, it could be your time. Tell me what you think. If you know me in person, I would love to know your thoughts about this. And if you don't, I'd love for you to leave a comment. I want this to be a discussion. Maybe there's a tradition that your family does that you'd love to share, because I'd certainly love to hear about it. I hope this lesson brought some clarity. I hope you've decided how you and your family want to celebrate first fruits. And we know that we have hope for the resurrection because Jesus was our first fruits. And that's definitely something we need to remember and honor, is that his sacrifice and resurrection. Our next lesson will be Shavuot, or the Feast of Weeks. I hope to see you then.